Hi again. So this is the next presentation I'll be moderating, which is Nick Hill's using positive pedagogy in striking and fielding games. So Nick's background is that he has been teaching for 17 years and coaching for 21 years all around the world. He's taught and coached in the UK, in Chile, and the US in a variety of different environments at all levels, schools, universities, and clubs, from 5-year-olds to 55-year-olds. He's a physical education teacher, a rugby coach, and an athletic development coach. Nick's a big believer and advocate in using player-centered philosophy and using TGFU and game sense in PE lessons and sports coaching sessions, which obviously he's going to talk about today. Those sessions relate to badminton, basketball, cricket, field hockey, rugby union, soccer, softball, tennis, volleyball. And Nick is also an assistant head coach of rugby at St. Joseph's College in Ipswich, England. And he's currently also doing a master's at the University of Stirling. And I came across Nick for the last two Positive Pedagogy coaching symposiums we actually did at Ohio in 2018 and 2019. And me and Nick had a very good relationship, and obviously being English and kind of I'm soccer, he's rugby. We had some very interesting conversations. So we've always kept in touch since, and it's great to have you on, Nick. And I'm looking forward to your presentation.
Thanks, Ash. Thanks, Ash, for that introduction. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everybody all around the world. Thanks for this opportunity. If you click onto the first slide, we put some context within the session. So basically, just going to describe some of the key features of what I did for the two in-person coaching symposiums when I was actually at the campus in Ohio. I did it 2 years in a row, very similar sessions. And the key is, how could I make the most impactful learning experience for students that are learning about coaching, that they're going to take it with them for the rest of their coaching careers? That's why I picked cricket, because they all have basic knowledge and understanding of striking and fielding, because obviously baseball and softball are two massive sports in America, which they know lots about, and most of them probably would have played one or the other or both. And then there's the wiffle ball that they do socially. So I picked cricket because they would have that foundation of what it kind of the context means. So the key was then I wanted to get them active, get them playing cricket. So I was going to share some of the things I did. Prior to that, though, if I give a bit of philosophy behind kind of how I did the session, is linked to how I would coach a normal session. This is my definition of player-centered coaching that I put together a few years ago in preparation for doing my applied lecture at the symposium in person. In essence, it's a combination of Lynn Kidman's definition of athlete-centered coaching, which is the first three. And then since my readings of her work over a good number of years now, my application of positive pedagogy, it's underpinned for me by the three core elements of self-determination theory, which is autonomy, competence, and relatedness, and that's where 4, 5, and 6 come into play. So that's kind of a bigger, broader umbrella of which this session was formed under. You'll see it says TGFU in brackets. For me, there's kind of the three elements of game-based coaching. You've got TGFU, you've got game sense, and then you've got application of constraints-based coaching. I, for one, argue in essence they're all the same. It just depends on the context you're in. But because of my background and experiences from when I was studying at Loughborough University many years ago, principles of play come to mind, which in essence is TGFU foundations. So what are the key objectives of bat, ball, and field? If players can understand that, we're all starting from the same page, same starting point. So I'll set these basic objectives. And again, I use Q&A to get it out of them to apply their knowledge from softball and baseball. Move on. Another key foundation of this approach is actually the way you set up your field, your classroom, the pitch, your court, whatever sport you're doing. And so this is a looking down at what the setup I had, because in the practical aspect, they've got some nets that go across this massive indoor space. I had a perfect space. As you can see, it's a long and narrow pitch or a wide and short pitch. The dots are the fielders, and as you see in the rules that come up next, the players move around those dots. So they're the basic rules that I set up. The key for me is everyone getting active, having lots of goes, and the more active you are, the better learning and impact you can make. So it was hit and run, bowlers swap every 4 balls, fielders move around every 2 balls. So it's the thinking behind the setup you're going to do is key for making this happen. So this is why, again, this is kind of game sense, understanding the game of how to play it. So you can see the natural progression from TGFU into game sense, and then constraints based of how I've structured the fields in the different directions. So we want the long and thin is to get those shots down the wicket. The wide pitch is the cross back shots that go left and right. So if we now move on. Why do I set up those rules? Well, from my experience as a kid playing cricket in England, in the real game of cricket, when you're out, that's it. There's no more batting. So if you think of the context of cricket, it can be played over 50 overs, which is a good 7-8 hours. If it's international test cricket, it's 5 days. But in the eyes of a learner, of a player, of a student, if you're out once and you never get back again, you're not going to have a great experience. So it's all about a positive learning experience. So if you have hit and run, all the batsmen are getting out all the time. Therefore, the rotation round, it's 5-10 minutes before the next time you're going to get a bat, rather than the next day or in several hours' time or the next day. Okay, you're going to get lots of goes at batting. Next challenge. Bowling is a very technical skill. You can't learn it within 5 minutes, 10 minutes. It's going to take a while. And particularly if you've never seen a sport before, it's almost like an impossible thing to do. So hence why I introduced literally just throw the ball into the ground so at least bounces once, it pitches once. Doesn't matter if you've got a straight arm, bent arm, you throw it underarm. We need to get the game up and running. We need to get everyone active. The other challenge is in a real game of cricket is 22 yards long. That's quite far for someone that's never bowled before. So again, shorten the wicket, makes it a lot more accessible for learners that have never played this game before. Next challenge. Okay, fielding. I remember as a young lad in the field, you stood right in the corner, 50 yards, 100 yards away from the action, just bored looking at the grass. So you've got to keep them on the toes. The best way to do that, okay, every 2 balls move around those markers you saw in the diagram. This adds in the collaboration between the fielders, working together, communicating. I would put 1 player in charge of making sure the fielders move around every 2 balls. In essence, like a fielding captain. It then gives a lot more communication. They're on their toes. And then the key is that they're seeing the game from different angles, from different positions. So as you can see, the positive pedagogical features are spread throughout this. One of the key things for me is all I was doing was kept reminding the students, the players, of the basic rules. The batters, hit and run. Once you're out, you swap over. Bowlers, just keep, again, I would step in sometimes. I'll just show them how to throw it into the ground if they were struggling, because again, the baseball guys sometimes throw beamers. Obviously in the real game of cricket, that's a no ball. Again, fielders, I'll just encourage them to move round and round. The other thing that I did was we'd play a game between 5 to 7 minutes. So it allows them, again, lots of opportunities, lots of repetition, and it helps them think while they're on the move. Watching, some of them had no idea what was going on. So play for about 5 to 7 minutes. Then I'd bring them in, the whole group, for a guided discovery Q&A. Okay, what are we doing well? What have you noticed? Any thoughts, any comments? And then they would take it in turns. And then I'd send them back into the game for another 5 to 10 minutes. So it's period blocks of time where they're doing lots of doing. But the key what I do, they then swap to the other pitch. So play on one pitch for 5 minutes, and then they go and play on another pitch for 5 minutes. So there's that alternating going on. So again, differential learning, again, their brains are constantly active. Also within that 5, as it went on, I then extend it for 10 minutes period of play. Roughly halfway through that, I'll give them a tactical timeout, and they would do their own team talk. So without my influences, they'll just get in their groups and they'll have a conversation amongst themselves. And that's when you saw the collaboration between them to help them clarify anything they misunderstood, but also helping each other. Next slide. So this is the last snippets of what I wrote for the book chapter. There it is, nice and blurred with my background. Okay, so at the end of the chapter, these are the couple of things that I put in essence at the end of that chapter. And the key for me, you can be successful in things that they've never seen before. So when you have novice players that turn up to a team, or you want to give them a different challenge, don't be afraid to try new things. Because through this approach, you've gone from not being able to play to being able to play and understand. And I was going to finish with, I sent a message to two of the students from 2 years ago. I asked them this question: why and what made the biggest impact on your subsequent coaching and outlook on coaching from this session that I did with them in person? One of them said, we weren't sitting through long explanations, not performing mindless drills. We were continuously active and learning at the same time. So that's what one of the people said. Another person said, even if we had no idea what was going on, we all were still having fun and learning in the process, whether we knew it or not. So again, there's lots of implicit learning. The second question I asked, what features of the session stick in your mind that helped you significantly improve your performance in cricket, having never seen and or played the game before? Inquiry dialogue helped to create a safer and more interactive learning environment, as the coach wasn't pointing out ineffective technique or scolding the athletes for blown assignments. Then another person said, when students athletes are in control of their learning, the more they retain and the better likelihood that they will absorb and be able to apply the knowledge, versus the standard American way of coaching, telling, talking at them, screaming and yelling at them for not getting it right. So it can have a lasting impact regardless of the age. Again, my background, when I was in Chile, I was coaching 5-year-olds on a Friday morning to 50-year-old adults on a Saturday afternoon. So it spans the age spectrum, it spans different sports, as you can see with all the resources that Harvey and Liza produce in their different books. So that's just some of the features and key things from these sessions. And hand over to questions, Ash.
Thanks for that, Nick. Currently, we don't have. Oh, we've just got one question put in. Thank you, Kyle, for this. So, Nick, do you think this approach is transferable all the way up? Oh, it's just gone. Someone must have published it. Do you think this approach is transferable all the way up to the pro level? Is there ever a situation for coaches to step in and tell the players what to do?
I would argue it's most definitely appropriate for every level of every sport in any country, in any culture. This is the beauty of this approach, and it's a framework. The stepping in aspect and telling them what to do, I would guess, is probably your own philosophy on how you should coach. The key ones for me is definitely safety. And the real challenge is actually, if they still can't get it, is you to find ways of how you can ask different questions or set up different tasks. I think a few of the guys have mentioned and girls have mentioned previously, this is a process. It takes time. It's not going to have an impact straight away. It's going to take a few sessions. It's going to take a few months. I've had experiences where I've been able to get people to know and understand cricket in 40 minutes. A few months, people playing better on a rugby pitch. Other times it took 4 years. It depends on the context and environment you're in, but it definitely should be applied at the highest level all the way down to the lowest levels. And I'm a firm believer the less talking you do as a coach, the better coaching you are doing.
Hopefully okay, the next question we've got from Stuart Curry, who asked one earlier. Hope all is well, Nick. Can you speak further about the debate of ideas and how your students engage in the learning, where they're comfortable with your questioning?
Yeah, that debate of ideas idea is a very useful tool to have in the toolbox. And the key is asking the right type of question that facilitates that discussion. There's one way you could do it as more coach-led, where you would set up a game and then ask them, okay, you now have a tactical timeout to work it out, or you ask them, what do you think, or what game would you like to play, or what rules would you like to tweak and add to this? If this is your objective, what rules do you want to put in place? So then you're collaborating a game together, and then you're empowering them to play their game rather than kind of the game you set up. But yeah, definitely that ideas, that back and forth dialogue and discussion is definitely one of the key tools in the toolbox.
And I guess just from my perspective, and kind of going off Kyle's question, where he kind of talks about the different levels on the spectrum, that session that you did, which I observed and thought was very good with the Ohio student coaches here, like if you had individuals that knew the game of cricket, and maybe he was doing this in England or Australia, kind of could you apply that same practice design, and what would you change specifically if you was working with more kind of expert players, especially at the youth level?
It's a great question, because that's kind of the challenge I'm in right now here in Ipswich. I've basically did a very similar session this week with year 10s, which are 15-year-old boys, and they all know and understand cricket. And it's, in essence, you would, for instance, I was sticking extra scoring zones. So for the more difficult shots, I would stick like a row of cones, or use the fences and things. So right, if you hit it in this zone, you're going to get 20 points, because it's harder to get. You've got to be really technical and really specific and get the right timing with the shots. So create different scoring zones, alternate the way the wicket is, and put it in harder positions within the facility that you have. So it's just tweaking that balance and that context. But it's a challenge I'm going through right now, and I'll be able to answer that question better in the next few months once the cricket season's happened, the next few months here in England. But from the way the last 2 weeks have happened, the kids have been, again, engaged, active. I've seen some really technical shots by players that I never knew could do them. I've seen bowlers bowl proper without teaching them. So again, and the key point, you're building on what they already know. I think that's another key concept of this approach. You're constantly scaffolding, constantly layering up, and they get better and better. And I've just had positive experiences in each environment I've been in.
Fantastic. Well, I appreciate that, Nick, and I'm sure the listeners have taken something away from that. And I appreciate you answering the questions the way you did. So I'm just now going to hand it over back to Stephen in terms of some housekeeping updates, and then we'll move forward with the next presentation.